I thought Tom 27M and I 23F had the perfect marriage. We were madly in love, and we had a strong emotional and physical connection. I had no idea that Tom was cheating on me with some random woman. Tom and I had been married for a few years, and we were still head over heels in love. We were that couple that everyone loved to hate because we were just so perfect together. We finished each other's sentences, always knew what the other was thinking, and never fought. It was like we were soulmates or something. But little did I know, Tom had been sneaking around with some rando at work. He felt guilty about it, but he couldn't seem to stop himself. He told himself that it was just physical and that he still loved me with all his heart. But he knew that he'd eventually have to come clean about his cheating ways. For now, Tom and I were living in our own little bubble of happiness. We went on cute dates, had amazing decks, and just generally enjoyed each other's company. I had no idea that Tom was up to no good, and I was too happy to even suspect anything. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. And my perfect marriage was no exception. I was doing laundry one day when I found something that made my heart sink. A condom wrapper tucked away in Tom's pants pocket. I knew what it meant, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided to investigate further. I started paying closer attention to Tom's behavior, looking for any signs of infidelity. I noticed that he was coming home later than usual and that he was being secretive about his phone. I wanted to confront Tom, but I was scared of what I might find out. I didn't want to ruin our marriage, so I decided to keep it a secret for the time being. I knew that I had to find out the truth, but I also knew that I had to be careful. As I continued to investigate, I felt a sense of unease growing inside of me. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew that it wouldn't be good. The next day I found myself using Tom's phone to search for something online. I didn't think anything of it at first, but as I scrolled through his messages, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Huge photos of hot, super Latinas filled his inbox. I felt a sense of shock and disgust as I read through the messages. Tom was not only cheating on me, but he was also sharing Hoot's photos and setting up dates. I couldn't believe that the man I loved was capable of such betrayal. I felt a sense of anger and hurt wash over me as I scrolled through the messages. I knew that I had to confront Tom, but I was scared of what I might find out. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the conversation that I knew was coming. Sure thing, here's how the story could continue. After discovering Tom was cheating on me, I felt a sense of anger and betrayal. I knew that I had to do something to get back at him, and the first person who came to mind was his stepdad, Jack. I had always found Jack attractive, but I had never acted on it before. Now I saw him in a different light. I started to flirt with him, testing the waters to see if he was interested. To my surprise, Jack seemed to be interested in me too. We started to spend more time together, and I could feel the chemistry between us growing stronger. We would go for walks together, have long conversations, and I could feel myself falling for him. At first, I felt guilty about my feelings for Jack. After all, he was Tom's stepdad, and I was still married to Tom. But the more time I spent with Jack, the more I realized that I deserved to be happy too. I knew that I had to be careful, but I couldn't resist the temptation. I started to make plans to sleep with Jack. Next week, I had a chance encounter with Jack at a family gathering, and I saw it as the perfect opportunity to make my move. We shared a friendly conversation, and I could feel myself starting to feel a connection with him. As we talked, I made a subtle move, touching Jack's arm and making prolonged eye contact. I could feel the chemistry between us growing stronger, and I knew that I had to take a risk. I could feel my heart racing as I flirted with Jack. I had never felt this way before, and I knew that I was taking a big risk, but I couldn't resist the temptation. As the night wore on, Jack and I found ourselves alone together. We continued to flirt with each other, and I could feel myself getting more and more attracted to him. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed Jack. It was a passionate kiss, and I knew that I had made my move. After our encounter at the family gathering, Jack and I both felt a spark between us. I knew that I had to take things to the next level. I invited Jack over to my house for a drink, and he accepted. I could feel my heart racing as I prepared for his arrival. When Jack arrived, I poured us both a glass of wine and sat down next to him on the couch. I could feel the tension between us growing, and I knew that I had to make my move. I leaned in closer to Jack, making eye contact and smiling. I could see the desire in his eyes, and I knew that he felt the same way. As we continued to explore each other's bodies, I felt a rush of excitement and pleasure. We undressed each other slowly, enjoying every moment. I could feel a sense of power and control as Jack submitted to me, and I reveled in it. But our moment of pleasure was interrupted by Tom, who walked in on us having decks while we were in some hardcore positions. He was shocked and angry, and I could see the hurt and betrayal in his eyes. I knew that I had made a huge mistake, and I felt a sense of guilt and shame wash over me. But I also knew that I had to stand up for myself and what I wanted. "What the duck is going on here?" Tom shouted, his face red with anger. "I think it's pretty obvious, Tom," trying to keep my voice steady. "Jack and I are having decks." Tom's eyes widened in shock, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. I knew that he was trying to process what was happening, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. "But why?" Tom asked. "Why would you do this to me?" "Because you cheated on me, Tom." My voice was full of anger and betrayal. "Because you never appreciated me, and because you never made me feel loved or wanted." The confrontation between Tom, Jack, and I was intense and heated. I tried to deflect the blame onto Jack, claiming that he cheated first and I was just getting revenge. Tom looked at me in shock and disbelief. I could see the hurt and betrayal in his eyes, and I felt a sense of guilt and shame wash over me. But I also knew that I had to stand up for myself and what I wanted. But I thought we were happy, Rachel, and we had a perfect marriage. But I said, well, apparently not, because you were too busy ducking some random girls to care about me. Tom looked at me in hurt and confusion. I would never do that to you, Rachel, he said, his voice pleading. I love you and I never wanted to hurt you. Well, apparently you did, I replied, my voice icy and cold. Because I found out that you've been ducking some random Latinas behind my back for months. Tom looked at me in shock, and I could see the guilt and shame wash over his face. He knew that I was telling the truth and he was caught too. Jack looked at us both in silence, and I could see the understanding in his eyes. He knew that he had made a mistake by sleeping with me. I stormed out of the house, leaving Tom and Jack behind. As I drove away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt and shame wash over him. I had never meant for things to turn out this way, and I didn't know how to fix what he had done. After the confrontation with Tom and Jack, we both realized that we needed to seek forgiveness and healing from each other. We knew that we had made a huge mistake, and we were ready to take responsibility for our actions. We started by apologizing to each other. We both admitted that we had cheated and how much we regretted what we had done. We could see the hurt and betrayal in each other's eyes, and we knew that it would take time for us to forgive each other. But we were determined to make things right. We attended therapy and worked on our emotional issues, and we did everything we could to repair our relationship. After we both worked on our issues and sought forgiveness from each other, I thought that our relationship would be better than ever. But I was wrong. 6 months after we sorted out our issues, the tough times started. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I loved Tom, and I thought that our relationship was perfect. But as time went on, I started to see the truth. Tom started to manipulate me, making me feel guilty and worthless for the smallest things. He would criticize me, put me down, and make me feel like I wasn't good enough. I started to feel trapped and scared, but I didn't know how to leave him. And then the other brutal times started. Tom would grab me, push me, and ignore me. He would leave marks on my body, and I was too scared to tell anyone. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time, never knowing when Tom would explode. I tried to leave Tom, but he wouldn't let me. He would apologize and promise to change, but then he would start giving me a hard time again. I felt trapped and alone, with no one to turn to. I didn't know what to do. But then I found the strength to leave Tom. I packed my bags and left, without looking back. I knew that I had to get away from him before it was too late. After leaving Tom and escaping him giving me a tough time, I knew that I had to file for divorce. I couldn't stay in that toxic relationship any longer, but I soon realized that it wasn't going to be easy. Tom used his money and power to make the divorce process long and expensive. He hired a high-powered attorney and did everything he could to make things difficult for me. I felt helpless and frustrated, but I didn't give up. I started to save money and look for legal help. I talked to friends and family and did my research online. I found a lawyer who was willing to work with me, and we started the divorce process. But Tom fought me every step of the way. He contested every decision and made the process as difficult and expensive as possible. I felt like I was drowning in legal fees and didn't know how I was going to make it through. But I refused to give up. I was determined to start a new life, free from Tom's control. I kept working with my lawyer, and slowly but surely we made progress. After months of legal battles, the divorce was finally granted. I was finally about to be free from Tom and could start building a new life for myself. After the divorce was finalized, I thought that I was finally free from Tom, but I was wrong. Tom started to shower me with expensive gifts and gestures, trying to win me back. He bought me a designer handbag, a diamond necklace, and a luxury car. At first, I felt conflicted and torn. On one hand, I was grateful for the gifts as I had daddy issues. On the other hand, I knew that they were not a solution to the abuse. I started to see through Tom's manipulation. I knew that he was trying to buy my love and loyalty, and I refused to let him. I started to refuse his gifts and told him that I didn't want anything from him. Tom didn't take it well. He became angry and aggressive, and I knew that I had to be careful. I was scared of what he might do, and I didn't want to be alone with him. After the divorce was finalized, I thought that I was finally free from Tom, but I was wrong. Even as I tried to leave him, I found myself drawn to Jack. We continued to have secret decks, meeting in secret locations away from Tom's eyes. At first, I felt a sense of excitement and pleasure with Jack. It was a release from the stress and tension of my marriage, and I enjoyed the feeling of being desired and wanted. But as time went on, I started to feel guilty and ashamed. I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I started to wonder if I was making a mistake by continuing to sleep with Jack. I tried to end things with Jack, but it wasn't easy. He was persistent, and I found it hard to resist his advances. As I struggled with my feelings for Jack and my guilt over the affair, I realized that I needed help. I started to attend therapy and worked on understanding my emotions and behaviors. In therapy, I started to understand the patterns of tough times I went through that I had experienced in my marriage. I realized that Tom had manipulated and controlled me, making me feel guilty and worthless. I saw how I had been drawn to Jack as a way to feel desired and wanted, and how I had used Dex as a way to cope with the stress and tension of my marriage. As I worked on understanding my emotions and behaviors, I realized that I didn't have to let Tom or Jack control me anymore. And I discovered something else about myself. I was a Dex freak. I loved the feeling of being desired and wanted, and I loved the rush of pleasure that came with Dex. Jack was amazing in bed, and I couldn't get enough of him. But I knew that I couldn't continue to use Dex as a way to cope with my problems. I had to find healthier ways to deal with my emotions and stress. I thought that I had been careful, but I was wrong. Tom discovered my affair with Jack and confronted me in a rage. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone in the court when Tom snatched it out of my hand. He saw a text message from Jack, and his face turned red with anger. "What the duck is this?" he shouted, waving my phone in my face. "Are you again ducking my stepdad?" I didn't know what to say. I was terrified and helpless, and I couldn't deny it. Tom saw the guilt and shame on my face, and he lost control. He started pushing me. I tried to defend myself, but I was no match for him. He was bigger and stronger than me, and I couldn't escape. "I'll end you and that guy," Tom shouted. I felt like I was going to die. Tom was in a rage, and I didn't know what he was capable of. I managed to escape, running out of the house and calling the police. The police arrested Tom, and I got a restraining order against him. I was safe, but I was traumatized. I couldn't believe that Tom had turned into a monster, and I couldn't believe that I had been so blind to his mental habits. After the discovery of Tom's mental issues, I knew that I had to take action. I couldn't let him get away with what he had done to me. I decided to take revenge and started to gather evidence of his abuse and financial corruption. I talked to friends and family, and they helped me to remember all the times that Tom had given me a tough time. I started to keep a journal, documenting every instance of each and every financial transaction that Tom had made without my knowledge or consent. I'd also started to work with a lawyer, building a case against Tom. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to take him down. After months of preparation, the day of the trial finally arrived. I was nervous and anxious, but I was also determined to see this through. I walked into the courtroom, took a deep breath, and looked Tom in the eye. I testified against Tom, telling the judge about his financial manipulation. I presented evidence of his wrongdoing, including text messages, photos, and financial records. Tom tried to defend himself, but the judge wasn't fooled. The judge found Tom guilty of financial exploitation and ordered him to pay restitution to me. I felt a sense of justice and victory, knowing that Tom would finally have to face jail. After the trial, I knew that I had to start rebuilding my life. I moved into a new apartment, one that was safe and secure. I found a new job, one that I enjoyed and that paid me a fair wage. I started to focus on my own happiness and well-being, rather than on Tom or even Jack. In the coming days, I went to the doctor because I missed some of my period dates, but when I went there, I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the pregnancy test. I was pregnant and the father was Jack. I was shocked and scared, but I was also excited and happy. I had always wanted to be a mom, but not Jack for sure. I knew that I had to keep the pregnancy a secret from Tom and Jack, at least for now. I didn't want them to know, and I didn't want them to have any say in my decision. I started to make plans for the future, including how to tell Jack about the baby, and I was also thinking of not having one. But my happiness was short-lived. Tom found out about the pregnancy, and he was furious. He accused me of sleeping with Jack behind his back, and he threatened to take custody of the baby because at that time I was his wife. I was terrified and heartbroken, and I didn't know what to do. I turned to Jack for help. He supported me and stood by my side no matter what. He promised to be there for me and the baby. But as the pregnancy progressed, I started to have doubts. I wasn't sure if I was ready to be a mom, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to raise a child on my own. I started to think about abortion, and I made an appointment at a clinic. I was scared and conflicted, but I knew that I had to do what was right for me. I went through with the abortion, and I felt a sense of relief and sadness. After the abortion, I knew that I had to take action against Tom. He had betrayed me and hurt me, and I wanted him to pay for what he had done. I started to search for Tom, knowing that he was on the run from the police after being found guilty. I used my resources and connections to track down Tom's whereabouts. I talked to friends and family, and I reached out to his old colleagues and acquaintances. I was determined to find him, no matter what. Finally, after weeks of searching, I found Tom. He was hiding in a small town, far away from civilization. I knew that I had to be careful. Tom was a dangerous man, and I didn't want to put myself in harm's way. I watched him from a distance, waiting for the right moment to confront him. When the moment came, I approached Tom with confidence and determination. I told him that I knew what he had done, and that I wanted him to pay for his crimes. Tom was shocked and scared, and he tried to run away. But I was faster and stronger. I caught Tom and held him down, waiting for the police to arrive. But then, I had a change of heart. I didn't want to hand Tom over to the police. I wanted to make him suffer, to make him pay for what he had done to me. So as I leaned down to check Tom's pulse, he woke up. He looked at me with fear and desperation in his eyes, and I knew that something was wrong. "Please, Rachel," Tom begged. "You have to let me go. I'll tell you anything you want to know, just let me go." I was skeptical, but I was also curious. I wanted to know more about Tom, and I wanted to understand why he had done the things he had done. So I agreed to let Tom go on one condition. He had to tell me everything. Tom started to talk, and I was shocked by what I heard. He told me about his dark and dangerous past, about the crimes he had committed and the people he had hurt. He told me about the demons that haunted him and the guilt that consumed him. I felt hurt and betrayed by Tom's revelations. I had trusted him and I had loved him, and he had lied to me and manipulated me. I didn't know what to do or how to react. But as I listened to Tom's story, I started to realize something. I had been just as guilty as Tom. I had cheated on my husband, and I had lied to him and manipulated him. I had put my own desires and needs above his, and I had hurt him deeply. I couldn't believe what was happening as Tom and I started to sis. It had been so long since we had been close, and the passion between us was hard to ignore. But just as things were getting steamy, a knock on the door interrupted us. I was shocked to see Jack standing there, but I couldn't turn him away. I invited him in, and Tom looked confused and surprised. Jack and Tom started to argue about their past, but I tried to calm them down and we started to talk and remember old times. As we talked, I started to feel something for Jack again. We used to be close, and I missed that feeling. Without saying a word, I started to take off Jack's clothes. Tom looked surprised, but I could see he was feeling the same thing. We all started to take off each other's clothes and things got intense and wild. It had been so long since I had felt this good, and I couldn't get enough. We moaned and groaned in pleasure, our bodies slick with sweat. But just as we were finishing up, I knew I couldn't keep Tom and Jack in my life. I had to get rid of them for good. I quietly got dressed, grabbed a lighter, and set the room on fire. I locked the door behind me and left the building without looking back. I knew I had made the right choice and I could finally move on with my life. I didn't need the drama and problems that Tom and Jack brought. I was free to live my life the way I wanted, without any distractions.